I used to live in an old farmhouse with my wife and my two sons. Darla was the most beautiful woman you would ever see. She had a pair of piercing green eyes and shoulder-length scarlet hair that shimmered like a glittering mirror in the sun. She was truly amazing. My two sons, Henry and Adam, were more than I could ask for. We didn't live in amazing conditions. The house was a little run down. Some of the lights didn't work. It was a bit of a struggle to flush the toilet sometimes. It was never dirty though. We always took care of what we had and appreciated the small things. My uncle actually left me the place when he passed away, and that was how we came to be there. We were living in the town not too far away, but it was tough going there. Rent was a killer and we barely made any progress in life. So we decided to move into the old house as our living costs would be brought down a lot. Darla was, at first, a little apprehensive about the idea when she first saw the place. But I think the idea of being able to afford better food and clothing and toys for the kids weighed stronger in her mind. So she eventually agreed. We had some difficulty getting settled, but after the stress of getting the place habitable had died down, we made the best of it what we could. The small inconveniences outweighed what it did for us as a family. Looking back now, I truly wish I had made less effort to coax Darla into it. Things would have been vastly different. The land where the house stood was no longer suitable for farming. Something was wrong with the soil, and my uncle had never taken care of the problem and had kind of left it to rot. It did have a certain charm to it though. There were many trees which housed many different species of birds and even some other woodland creatures such as squirrels and foxes. A small lake sat not far from the back of the house. With some work, it could have been a wonderful place. At least, that's what I thought back then. Now, I wish I could just burn every inch of it off the face of the earth. A Tuesday morning found me in the kitchen tinkering with the stove as it had been giving Darla some trouble lately, when I heard Adam yelling from outside and running towards the house. I immediately dropped everything and ran out to meet him. He shouted hysterically that Henry had slipped on the bank of the lake and fallen in, and he'd gone under and not come back up. My heart froze instantly upon hearing this, and I sprinted faster than I ever had to the edge of the lake. Adam caught up to me and pointed frantically to where he had seen Henry go under, and I leapt into the cold water to save my son. A murky darkness met me under the water, and I began to truly panic, not knowing how I would find him if I couldn't see him. Somehow, by some miracle, to my left I saw movement, and I could just barely see a pair of legs thrashing in the water. I struck out towards them and grabbed one of Henry's legs and pulled him towards me. He went absolutely ballistic, trying to scream, a thin stream of bubbles dashing for the surface out of his mouth. It took me a few seconds to pull him closer and make him see that it was me. He stopped kicking and thrashing, and together we managed to break for the surface and gasp for breath, Henry choking slightly on the bit of water he had swallowed in his fear. I dragged him with me to the bank and pulled him out of the water. We just lay on our backs for a while, recovering and catching our breath. Adam sat next to us, crying and shaking out of fear and relief. After recovering, I got up very angry, and I towered over the boys in my rage, yelling at them about how many times I'd warned them not to play by the lake, as I didn't know if it was safe, and they had always said that they wouldn't, but they had broken the rule. In the middle of my rant, I noticed Henry was just staring at the water blankly and not listening to a word I was saying. I relented and crouched down next to him. He was obviously traumatized, and now wasn't the time to be yelling at him. I took them inside and Darla grabbed Henry and sobbed and shook him, telling him never to do something like that again. She took him upstairs to get him dry and into bed. Meanwhile, I rounded on Adam, as he was the older son, and gave him a stern talking to. He apologized over and over, and I eventually let him be, believing he was scared and sorry enough. I sat at the kitchen table with a beer after Adam went upstairs and drank deeply to calm my nerves. I was still soaking wet, but I didn't care. A short time later, Darla came downstairs with a concerned expression on her face. "Is he okay?" I asked her. "I don't know. He isn't talking to me and he doesn't even look at me. He looks through me. He's really shaken up." I told them 1,000,000 times not to go playing there, and they always promised they wouldn't. "They're kids, Will. The temptation is too much for them. You know that. You were a little boy too." She finished and I nodded my head. "I know. We have to talk to them again when they feel better. I need to get out of these clothes and dry off." Darla took my empty bottle after I drained my beer, and I went to the bathroom and peeled off my clothes and took a warm shower. When I was done, I went to Henry's room to check on him. He was lying on his bed, staring at the ceiling. "Hey buddy, are you okay?" I asked him. He stared at the ceiling a little longer, and then he began to cry. He sat up and hugged me tight, and I hugged him. "I'm sorry, Dad," he sobbed. "It's okay, boy. You're okay, and that's all that matters," I said. He stared at me and lowered his voice a little. "Dad, when I was in the water, something touched me. Something tried to pull me down," he said. "No, son, I was the one that touched you. I was pulling you closer to me." "It wasn't you, Dad. Something pulled me under the water before you came." But what? Son?" I asked him uncertainly. I couldn't get anything more out of him, and he fell asleep after a while, exhausted from the ordeal. Later, when I spoke to Darla, I told her what he had said. She seemed just as confused and concerned as I was, and didn't really know what to say. The next day, I went down to the lake and stood there for a while, looking out over the water. It was completely still and silent. I could see no movement, no ripples, nothing. Maybe it was a trick of the mind, but somehow the water was almost too still. Unnaturally still. I looked out for a little while longer, and then put it out of my mind. I spent the rest of the day finishing up the stove and fixing some of the lights that didn't work. That night, while Darla and I were in bed, she said Henry seemed to be better now and was behaving normally. I said I was glad and kissed her goodnight, and we went to bed. There was a strange smell in the air now. A salty, murky, watery smell, and I could hear a gentle sloshing. An icy wind breathed over my skin as I became aware of where I was, standing over the edge of the lake. I faintly wondered to myself how I had gotten here. I remembered kissing Darla and going to sleep, but now I was here. Or was I? I couldn't tell if I was dreaming or not. Somehow, it didn't seem like I was, but I must have been. In the midst of turning away from the water to go back to the house, I glimpsed a slight movement in the water and I froze. As I looked on in horror, a dark shape rose out of the water, sending large ripples outwards. It was huge, and flailing out from behind the shape as it rose were long black tendrils that seemed as if they were pure darkness itself. It rose further from the surface and I realized it was the head of some horrific black mass. A pair of strange glowing amber eyes slowly opened and fixed themselves on me. The water started to churn and boil as it moved, and I felt a scream rising in my throat. Staring at this strange, glistening black mass of eyes and tentacles was going to drive me insane. I began to run, finally letting out the scream that had been brewing inside me. But I didn't get 5 steps before a slimy, dark tentacle shot out of the water and wrapped itself around my waist. I was lifted, screaming into the air, and felt myself yanked backwards. Then I hit the surface of the water. Down, down I went, endlessly down. I could see the thing more clearly now. It was massive, but it seemed like nothing more than a writhing black mass of tentacles. It was truly terrifying. I thrashed and panicked in its grasp, my fear indescribable as it pulled me further down. My vision was fading, my breath was gone. I was dying. And then I woke up, still screaming and trying to shake myself out of the grasp of its tentacles. It took me a few moments to realize I was lying on the floor next to my bed, and I jumped up, harshly gasping to catch my breath. Darla wasn't in the room. Everything was quiet. It was morning. It seemed like late morning. I'd overslept. Maybe everyone was down in the kitchen having breakfast, but that didn't seem right. Darla would have woken me, as she knew I didn't like to sleep late. Fear and dread crept over me again as I ran out of the room. I went to each of the boys' rooms, and my panic rose as I found each one empty. There was no one in the kitchen either. I began to scream their names as I ran out of the back door, and I screamed louder when I saw that the surface of the lake churned and boiled just like it did in my dream. As I got closer to the bank, the white foaming water seemed to calm down, and my soul shattered somewhere deep inside me when I saw Darla's body float up out of the water, face down. 2 smaller bodies floated up seconds afterwards, just before I leapt into the water myself, screaming. I managed with a massive effort to drag them all to the bank and out of the water. I lost myself then, trying in turn to resuscitate them, and when it wouldn't work, I screamed in despair and tried the next one. I couldn't save any of them, and they were gone. My family was gone. I sat there with their bodies for hours and just wailed and screamed in sorrow. They were all I had. My life and my soul. My love. My wife. My beautiful Darla. My wonderful boys. Lost so young. My everything was gone. I sit at the edge of the lake every day now. I look out over the water and wonder why. Why didn't it take me? Why did it fool me into thinking it did, while in reality, it took my family instead? I've tried screaming out over the water and demanding to know why. I eventually got to the stage of begging it to just take me too, so I could be with them again. It's all useless though. It never responds. And in the dark place that is now my mind, I seem to understand that for some reason, it didn't want me. It only wanted them. Hey guys, and thank you for listening to the latest in my CreepyPasta series. Now, once again, this is an awesome story by Thousand Thorns on Reddit. So if you haven't gone and checked out his stuff already, then what are you waiting for? I've done loads of stories by him now, and they're all just incredible. So get over there. have a read of his stuff. Let me know which one you want me to do next, because he's a really great guy and he allows me to use his stories. So, I mean, what more could you ask for? Anyway, when it comes to the schedule, everything seems to be going a little bit smoothly. Without jinxing it, I'm touching, well, fiberglass, not wood, but you know, touch wood. Everything seems to be going fine. The baby is great, she's very healthy, and you know, we've had our assessments and everything is going smoothly with that as well, touch wood. So really, you know, everything's great. Social media links, including the Discord, will be down in the description below. I do chat with quite a few of you on Discord now, so if you want to talk to me, talk to other people that like this sort of thing, then get you sent on there. We'll start doing some streams on there as well, so I'll be playing things like Dead by Daylight, 7 Days to Die, things like that. So if you want to come watch or even join, get on the Discord. Enough of me rambling anyway. Thank you for listening once again, and take care.